Hi, this is D-Doc here, and I wanted to talk about something I was thinking about this morning. This is a little bit different from my usual plans. This is just more of a spontaneous thing, but I was thinking about how come it's normal when we're talking to a camera and we don't think there's anything weird about that, but then if we're not talking to a camera or a person specifically, how come then it's weird that we're talking to ourselves? I was thinking about this morning, and the reason for this is because I often talk to myself when I'm alone, out loud, not in front of a camera or anything, not even to an audio recorder. I'm just naturally used to talking to myself out loud, and I know this is a weird thing to admit. People will think I'm weird, but I'm honestly not doing it because I'm mentally disabled. I'm doing that because I know I'm talking to myself, and I need to sort out specific thoughts. In fact, it's really weird for me to be recording videos because personally, I'm not used to talking to a machine and then having that machine record it and then make a video out of it so other people can see it. I'm so used to talking to myself and just sorting out my own thought process that it doesn't come off as weird to me. But I have sometimes run into a problem where my family may overhear me and I'm in my room and they're like, "Hey, are you okay? Why are you talking to yourself? You know you're talking to yourself?" I'm like, "Yes, I know I'm talking to myself. I promise you I'm not crazy. It's just something I do to help me figure out my thought life, my thought process." And it's something that I feel like not like, is it just me or is it a stigma to try and figure out your own thought process? You know what I mean? Like, when I was younger, instead of talking to myself, I used to write in a diary. And that was more acceptable. My parents didn't eyeball me in any weird way because of it. So I would just write in my diary, write out my thought process. And I guess it's not looked down on as much and you can get away with it. It's more quiet, so you're not drawing as much attention or whatever. But, you know, in my diary, like, it was personal for me, right? Like, it helped me understand myself at a very young age because I used to write in a diary like elementary school age, from like first grade all the way through middle school, I believe, and then I kind of dropped it in high school. But I would write my diary, and I would play out whatever scenarios or fantasies that I had at that young age, and it would help me come to understand how I felt better. And I don't know, like, okay, diaries are okay, but then if you really need to talk out something, like if you vocally need to talk about it, because eventually it just got to this point where it's like, it's right in the moment, I can't just write it out, my hand hurts, or, I just need to get out of my system right now. I just need to sort out my thought process. And there's no one else to talk to. Because here's another thing about me. I was a very lonely kid while growing up. My family, they weren't that social, they were kind of quiet. We didn't even really have family dinners together. So, and my closest friend when I was at home was really my dog. I mean, not to say that my family was abusive or neglective or whatever, it's just that we were quiet. And we didn't really talk too much to each other because everyone was busy. And so I had my dog and myself. And I often had to entertain myself. So I would write my diary, watch TV, do all this other stuff. I'm very used to being by myself. I'm not a very social person in general. And so that's why I'm so used to talking to myself. Because I would have thoughts, and there'd be no one there to help me explain or talk through my thoughts. So I just got used to talking to myself. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think actually, because of that, I have learned to handle my own issues better. But I feel like other people don't have this advantage because they think it's weird to talk to yourself. Like they'll say, "Well, hey, if you're going through such a stressful time, why don't you see a therapist?" And to be honest, I did see a therapist when I got older in high school. I would get depressed and I'll be like, "Okay, my family's telling me to go to a therapist and see someone. I'm going to do that. And so I did, and it was an okay experience. It was, you know, it helped in some ways. Like, the therapist suggested some solutions. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take that into consideration. And they're nice to talk to. But it's different. It's a different experience from talking to yourself. Because, the therapist is another person entirely, right? They have their own thoughts that they're giving you. And they're listening to your thoughts. So it's like, it's another person. Whereas if you're talking to yourself, if you're writing it in your diary, or if you have an audio recorder, or if you got a video, or if you're just like me and you just talk randomly out loud in your room because you're so used to that because you're so antisocial, haha. No, if you're talking to yourself, it's a different experience because you have only you. It's your own thoughts, and the reason why I talk to myself out loud too is so that way I can hear back what I'm saying to myself. If you keep it all in your head, which, by the way, what do you think you're doing when you're just thinking to yourself in your head? Is that not still talking to yourself? It's just not out loud. You're keeping it all in your head. But the problem with keeping it all in your head is that you don't get a chance to really hear what you're actually thinking. To really go, oh, is that really correct? Like, you might have a disturbing thought and you didn't really realize it was disturbing until you see it or you hear it again. Like, oh, that might be wrong. Maybe I should not do that. I feel like people are so detached from how they actually think. Like, they'll say one thing but then do another thing or feel another thing. They'll say, oh, I love this person, but then they might go cheat on them. Or, oh, I would never do that to you, but then they do it anyway. It's like, what are you doing? Where are your values? Okay? What are your values, or what's your actual thought process? Are you actually thinking? And this is another reason why I'm glad I talked to myself. Because I know how I'm thinking. If I do something that's off, or not aligned with how I'm thinking, then I can catch on to it quickly and say, wait a minute, that's not right. I need to correct it. So, I remember my teacher in high school gave my class this test where we were supposed to test what our actual values were. So before the test, we would list out like 10 values, family, money, power, love, companionship, something like that, what we actually valued. And there were 10 of them. There were exactly 10. I remember this. I wrote down the first 5 correctly. I'll explain what I mean by correctly in a moment. Like, I wrote down something like God was first, because I believe in God. I'm a Christian. I'll be honest about that. Straight off the bat. I'm a Christian. God first, then family, then, see, I can't remember the values right now, so I'm trying to just remember what it was on there. God and family were the first 2 that I had on there. Then there was, like, financial stuff, like home, taking care of myself. Main point, I got 5 of them. Like, I wrote down the first 5 and I wrote down the second 5 because it was 10 values. Then we took the test. And I'm going through this test. I'm like, yeah, that's in line with what I think. Yeah, that's in line with what I think. Yeah, da-da-da-da-da-da. And my teacher, before she gave this test, right, she was saying how I see a lot of kids not get, their values right. And we need to talk about values and, you need to have your values in line. And so I was just like, well, I agree with that 100%. Why wouldn't anyone have their values right? So I'm going through this test. And I'm like, yeah, I think this way. Yeah, I think this way. Yeah, I think this way. Yeah, that's correct. No, that's wrong. I don't like that. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Took the test. Got my results. Like, we had to, like, add up the points because it was, like, a point thing. So it's like, oh, if you got this many points for these questions or whatever, for this section of the test, then you have this value first. And then if you got this many points for the next value, it's your second value, and da-da-da. So it's like you have to reorder your actual values. Because before, you had 10 values that you thought how it was ordered. Like, oh, I think this is my first value. I think this is my second value. I think this is my third value. And you went through all 10 and you list them in order. Like, I agree with that. That's important, right? But then after you took the test, you're reordering them, and what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to make you realize what your actual values are. Because you may say one thing, but then your actions or your actual thoughts may say another thing. So when I got back my results, I was like, this is exactly what I expected. I got the first 5 values right, and then like the second 5 were a little off. It was something like power and money and like something else, pride or vanity or whatever. So I told my teacher this. I'm like, hey, I got the first 5 values right. I only mixed up like these 3 at the end. And she's like, oh my goodness, that's so good. You're really good. And so I'm like, yay, you're telling me no one else had gotten this correct? You mean to tell me I'm the only one that like knows what I value? Like, what are you saying here? No, are you telling me that it's rare for other people to actually know what they value? Now, the way how Jungian typology fits into this, because that's where my thoughts are heading right now, is I was trying to not bring Jungian typology into this, but I just have to. Values are a very intuitive feeling thing. Because intuitive feeling says, hey, this is what I value. This is what my character is based on. This is how I feel. I relate to this. I don't relate to this, right? Intuitive feeling does that. It's the personal you, okay? And I would say to an extent, intuitive thinking does this as well, because intuitive thinking relies on principles. It's like, well, it's a principle to not hurt other people. Something like that. It's more like, logically, it does not make sense to hurt other people. That's more intuitive thinking. Intuitive feelings like, this is just how I feel. This is just how I feel. Because I feel that God is first, and then family, and then so on and so forth. So, that's intuitive feeling, the values thing. And I definitely am glad that I got that in order in my life. Because I don't think it's healthy to go through your life not knowing what you actually value in life. Watch your thoughts, for they become words. Watch your words, for they become actions. Watch your actions, for they become habits. Watch your habits, for they become character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. Okay? It always starts with goes on in your head, and then you act it out, and then it's your destination, is where you end up. Okay? That's why you need to reflect on your thoughts and what you actually feel and what you actually think. Okay? Don't let anyone influence that. Don't let anyone put their own subjective bias and their own impressions onto you, because they may be wrong. Okay? I think the problem that our society has is that it places too much value on other people. Like, okay, I follow this person and I believe they are right, so I'm just going to follow what they're saying. Meanwhile, they could be completely wrong and they lead you down the wrong path. You know, the blind leading the blind. Okay? You need to do that for yourself. Yes, you may get some inspiration from other people, like, oh, hey, yeah, that's a pretty good thought. I never thought of it that way before. You know, I never felt that way before. I'm going to reflect more on that by myself. That's what you need to do. You need to actually sit down by yourself, away from any other influences, away from any other people, and say to yourself, what do I actually think? What do I actually want to think about? What am I going through right now in my mind? Okay, spend time with yourself. You know, I'm not saying all the time, because that's the problem that I have. I spend way too much time with myself, and I end up being away from other people, and not, you know, interacting with them, not being social enough. That's my personal problem that I'm learning how to conquer over. But if you have the problem where you're spending too much time with people and you're being influenced by too many other people, you need to separate yourself from that. And that includes the internet too. Because you may be thinking, well, we're going through quarantine right now. I'm not around anyone else. Hello, Netflix, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the social media platforms. You know what I'm talking about. You need to separate yourself from that too for a little bit. Because in a way, you're still interacting through that. Okay? You need to just separate yourself and actually reflect on how you're actually feeling and how you're actually thinking. Like, it's great if you need, like, help. I'm not saying to not go to a therapist either. It's good if you need help with this area because you still don't know how you should be thinking or how you should be feeling. But at the same time, don't let anyone dictate to you how you actually should think and how you actually should feel. Okay? Your feelings are honest. They are the truth. They are your truth. Okay? And if your truth is truthful, it's the truth. Because I know some people don't like it when the phrase "your truth," because they'll say, only a liar says it's my truth, and it's like, okay, I see where they're coming from, because potentially someone can use it in a hyperbole or whatever, and they're actually lying. But still, if what you are experiencing is your truth, it's the truth, it's your truth, it's your experience, right? If what you're experiencing is truthful, it's authentic, then it is your truth. No one else is experiencing that. That's how I interpret that phrase, your truth. It's your truth because you're experiencing it. And then someone else may have their truth because they're experiencing it in another way. So, all this to say, to conclude, just be a little bit more aware of how you're thinking and how you're feeling. So that's all I have to say. That's why I talk to myself out loud like a crazy person, because I am doing it for my own mental health. I'm doing it so that way I don't end up in a bad place. And that's why I think more people should do it, so that way they don't end up in a bad place. Get to know yourself. Be alone with yourself. Learn from yourself. And if there's something that you think is wrong about yourself, work on that. Then go out to receive some extra help. Don't just accept anything that comes in and out of your brain. Okay? Guard your mind. I mean, be open-minded to new ideas, but then guard it and actually go, what do I actually think is correct? What do I actually think is wrong? What do I actually think is good? What do I actually think is bad? Okay? That's all I have to say. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you later.